All right, I'm back at it. So I was really excited. I got pre-assigned on Monday, and so I started Tuesday morning already having a job. And it was from Atlanta to just above New York City, which I really like. It's almost 1,000 miles, and I like that. Now I will tell you this: a lot of the locations of pods are small, but they're doing their best with one, maybe two people that are in the office. Usually one, and they bust their tails. I tell you, the Cinnamon Sin, New Jersey, and the Atlanta, Georgia pods locations, they are so efficient. You can get there just before 6 and get there until like 2:50 or 2:45 p.m. and they'll still serve you. And they'll do it just fast and effective. It's really, really impressive. I don't know what that had anything to do with the job I was doing yesterday, but hey, props to those guys. So if they actually happen to be watching this, or anybody from pods, that's the way to do it. The way they do it is you can get there just before 6, tell them your trip sheet number, and they will have you loaded up in a few minutes, and you're spending most of your time throwing straps and getting paperwork done because they are that good. All right. So I headed out of Atlanta probably about 6:30 because with 3 pods, and was going up towards New York. I was able to get, oh geez, where did I stop for the night? Was it Pennsylvania? No, it was Virginia. Harrisburg, Virginia is where I got. I shut down for the night. And then I got up early and drove the rest of the way out there. Did the drop, and I was so happy because I got there about an hour early, dropped the pods off, did not have a pre-assignment, and I was wanting one because when you go to New York, you have no idea where, there is no truck stops anywhere near New York. You have to drive to, what is it, Milford, Connecticut, or there's a couple of small ones, but there's one location that only has 8 parking spaces, and if you're there for longer than an hour, they'll complain at you or threaten to tow you or something like that. That's a pilot. And I came to learn a few things. So if you're a new driver or you're a pods driver, here's a couple of things that you're going to want to take note of that I ended up learning. So I made the delivery, dropped off there, and was pre-assigned and got a job that was actually out Long Island. So I drove about 50 miles out to Long Island, did the pickup, and then I looked at it, and my hours of service, I was barely over 2.5 hours left, and I knew rush hour traffic was coming in. So I looked at it and said, where can I go? What can I do? This is where, the pods locations do not allow you to sleep there overnight. At least it says that on every single location. No sleeping overnight. Does not allow that. So when you're trying to drive, if you do a search on Google Maps or something for truck stops, you're not going to find anywhere near New York. But what you will find, if you do a search for it, is service, what do they call it? Service stations. I think it's called truck service stations, or service something, service stop, service location. And there was heading out, because there is nothing anywhere near, no truck stops from where I was leaving on Long Island. The nearest truck stop was 115 miles away. No Schneider drop lots that I could stay in, because sometimes, like if I'm in Orlando, there's a drop lot there kind of near one of the pods locations, like 6 miles away. I'll end up staying there overnight, like I did. And you could search for it if you go in, if you're a pods driver and you want to go to where to, points of interest, trucking, Schneider drop lots, Schneider something drop. It's on the bottom. It's a yellow icon, and then you can say near me, near destination, or along the way. But there was nothing, and there's nothing anywhere on Long Island or in Manhattan. So it's like, what are you going to do? Well, that's where those service centers, service stations, whatever they're called, come in handy, because you're not allowed to take a truck into Manhattan, not like you'd want to anyway. But if you're going down the New Jersey Turnpike, and I'll get to this in a second, New Jersey Turnpike, there's a lot of roads out there in New York. No surprise there, right? A lot of stuff, a lot of activity. I mean, that's why the city never sleeps. There's a lot of stuff going on. But the very first one you come to when you're going down south towards the Delaware Memorial Bridge is you come across the Vince Lombardi, and then you come across the Thomas Edison about 10 miles later. Then the Molly Pitcher, maybe 15, maybe they're 15 miles apart or something like that. Then you're going to run into the what is this name? Richard Stockton service location, service center, service station, whatever it is. And there's a lot of parking at those. So if you do a search for truck stops in New York, you're not going to find them. You do a search for service station, service center, something like that, you'll find them. And there are quite a few of them spread about every 12 to 15 miles apart going down the turnpike. So that's one of the advantages. So I wanted to point that out too. If you're looking for a truck stop, a place to stop overnight, you're not going to find it, but that might be helpful. Now, the other thing I was going to mention about the turnpike, this is a pet peeve I have and a little bit of an annoyance that I have with Schneider. In their workbook, they state there are 3 roads that you're not allowed to take without permission. They're toll roads. Number 1 is the New Jersey Turnpike. Number 2 is the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. And the third one is the Florida Turnpike. And their answer, the reason for that is that there are other roads you can take that are just as fast and effective without you having to pay. Okay, I'm going to actually argue this a little bit with you. Because there is, if you go up Interstate 81 and then you turn east on 70, some of our locations have me, go that direction. It calculates the miles using whatever formula it wants to. I don't know. It's not hub miles, which is basically the truck moving numbers. I don't know how they calculate the number of miles from one location to another, because I can never get those miles. I mean, does it do the most direct route? Does it make sense to if it takes you through back roads? Maybe the most direct truck route. I don't know. What I can tell you is that if it routes you a certain direction, if it routes you and base its mileage off of the route that it tells you, and that takes you down the New Jersey Turnpike, and that is a road that Schneider doesn't want you to take, that is an issue. Because if they tell you you can't take a road that you need to take in order to make the miles that you're being paid for, then that tells me right there that you should be able to take that road. Or they need to pay you the hub miles or whatever based on the drive that they want you to do. Another thing is, if the program tells you, if they have a company policy that tells you that they don't want you to drive on certain roads, they should make those excluded from the routing system and not allow you to take those roads. Or pop up something that says, you're going, would you like to route onto non-company or a company approved road? Would you like us to route you onto a company permission road or something like that? Have it be something like that. Because to me, if you're being paid for something like driving down from one place to another, and it tells you don't go on the turnpike, and the navigation system tells you to go down the turnpike because that's where they're calculating their miles from, you should be able to do it. And if the program routes you around it, because sometimes they'll route you 2 extra hours out of the way to avoid paying a toll, or because it's a more direct route on U.S. or state highways. That's really annoying too, because I don't know how they're doing their miles, but what I do know is that they're probably calculating that based on the back roads, even though it takes you 2 or 3 hours later. There was a time a couple of weeks ago, I went from Pittsburgh to Middle River, Maryland, and it routed me through a bunch of middle Pennsylvania towns. Some of them were like speed limit 35 or lower. Some of them were just single lanes for trucks for miles on end that you have to jump on the right lane and just go up and down these hills. And it says trucks must be in the right lane. And then you're going to notoriously get behind a truck that's pulling some heavy load, and he's going to be going 20 to 25 miles an hour, and you're creeping along. but it routes you that way. If it routes you that way, pay me based on those miles. Or route everything based on interstates, which is what we're going to do most of our bread and butter, driving anyway. So to me, those are a couple of things. If you're gonna, if you tell me to drive away a certain direction, that should be approved. Or tell the program not to allow me to drive on those roads. So that's that. I was really happy. I got pre-assigned yesterday. As soon as I arrived and offloaded everything and loaded everything up, I found that if I put everything away like I'm about to have to leave, I'll get another job and have to pull it all right back out again. If I don't, and I leave it on the back of the truck hoping for a pre-assignment, I'll sit there for a while. So put everything away. You know how it is. So anyway, went down Long Island and was trying to figure out where to go. My next stop was Cinnaminson, New Jersey. So I stopped there first thing this morning at 6 a.m. Man, are those guys efficient. And I tell you, it was annoying to me that another truck, they have multiple spots that you can pull up in. They allow like 4 trucks in to offload. And the trucks, for whatever reason, like to just park right next to you on the right. There's other spaces. There's like 10, 12 spaces you can stop in. And you just had to stop in the one right next to me on the right. Which means when you go to throw the straps, you're having to throw the straps that are 30 feet long. You have to throw them up and over at an angle to get it to go over the whole thing. But you can't get enough of an angle. So as soon as I got loaded, I'm telling the guy, yeah, I can't throw my straps. I tried throwing them 3 times and they go right up on top of the pod and then fall off. So I ended up having to pull forward because that was an inconsiderate driver. So don't be an inconsiderate driver. Make sure that if you are pulling in, give room to any trucks on your left-hand side so they can pull straps too. Unless you happen to notice that they're just connecting up with chains at the bottom. That would be an exception. Oh man, leaving New Jersey, heading down, because I'm headed down towards South Carolina. And this morning, I sat there last night looking for alternate routes that were truck routes. I was pulling out a truck map. I was looking at various different ways, and every single truck map, I was looking at it, and then I did some research, and it was like, yeah, speed limit is 40 miles an hour for this stretch of the U.S. highway. And then there's another one you have to take for another 20 miles, and it says, yeah, we range between 30 and 45 there. And I'm like, you know what? I could just get on the interstate on the New Jersey Turnpike and go straight down. But, which is what the Schneider navigation wants me to do. And I looked at that and I said, if I start taking all these back roads, I am going to add 1.5 hours to my drive. Not to mention the fact that it's going to put me driving there, since I'm in New Jersey at 6, and this would be me driving on back roads in small town America, small town New York, no less, in New Jersey. So I could be there for 2 hours. I looked at this and shook my head and said, no. Navigation is taking me straight on the New Jersey Turnpike, and that's what I'm going to do. So I did it. I mean, the last few times when I have asked permission, which is what it says in the manual to do, when I've asked permission, I have not received a response from anybody. None of my DTLs have responded. They just ignore it. When I've sent emails, they don't respond. When I said, navigation is routing me through the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, do I have permission to cross that? Oh, 20 to 30 minutes later, I got a phone call. Don't go that way. Don't go that way at all. And what he did is he routed me to a fuel stop that was along another route, which allowed me to get paid for those miles. So that way it wasn't like 200 and some odd miles straight down through Delaware on this one road that goes in. If they close the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, and I happened to be going over that, the bridge tunnel, when Hurricane Ophelia was there. So it would have been in the same time period that was there. So they probably would have closed it if they wanted to. And if that was the case, I may have had to go all the way back up and then around. So I called and said, all right, do I have permission to go on there? And that's when I was called, and they said, no, don't go that way. And they routed me around. So they added a stop for me that was along a road, and the DTLs can do that. They can add a stop that you have to do in order to get on your job. That allows you to be paid for those miles, which is great. I like that solution. And New Jersey Turnpike today was straight on my list. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do it. Because, I mean, they always say, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. But the way I look at it is, Every account is different. I have asked multiple times if I can get permission, and they have not replied. So it's an easy pass thing, and I looked it up, and the route that I was on in an 18-wheeler was only going to be like $20 to $25 for the portion I was going to be driving on total, because I went into the New Jersey Turnpike toll estimator on their official website, and that's what it told me. I'm like, I have been on roads before, and I have seen the tolls that pop up there are $15 or $20, and that's for just me going through one toll that the program's routing me on. So what's the deal with the New Jersey Turnpike? Is it just, I get it. I will try to route around it whenever possible, but when I am going from the north of New York straight through to the south, I'm going to have to cut way out and go on all these back roads, or go over to Pennsylvania and take interstates down and whatever in order to join back up on 95 on the other side of the turnpike. And if I'm not getting paid for it, I'm not going to do it. Today, I was able to drive from above New York, drove straight down the turnpike, smooth sailing in the early morning hours to get to New Jersey by 6. Got there, loaded up, had a little bit of traffic getting down there, passing down Baltimore and Washington, D.C. was, for the most part, it was okay. There was a couple areas of slowdowns. And I am right now at a truck stop in Kinley, North Carolina. I was able to get 560 miles down today, despite the slowdowns, despite the for whatever reason, the tablet routed me right before the Delaware Memorial Bridge. It's the Carney's Point. It's around Carney's Point. It routed me to take 1C off of I-95, and 1C takes you down on this, like on a U.S. highway, but it's a back road. You can drive on it, but I'm like, why am I going down this? And as soon as I drove, and it said for like 15 miles, take exit 1C. I was like, okay. I took exit 1C, trying to figure out what it was trying to do. And as soon as I took it, it said out of route. I'm like, are you kidding me? You routed me this way, and now you're telling me I'm off route? So then I had to go down about 3 miles. And that was fun, because as soon as I found a place to turn around, my cell phone and the tablet lost connection. So I tried disconnecting from the tablet and then connecting back up. The new connection manager that Schneider has us using, if you put in a truck number and it does not connect, it kicks it back out. It doesn't just constantly look for it. So it says, oh, your truck isn't connected. So what I ended up having to do is manually do my, set my status to drive or to whatever. Tried calling Schneider for support, and I could not get anybody because I had no signal. So I ended up having to drive until I got to my next TIV tire check and load securement area, which was like 120 miles down the road. And then I was able to get a signal and able to connect it back up to the truck. And then the truck, in its infinite wisdom, decides it's going to glitch a couple of times. And so it added some 0-second long statuses, that were off duty and blank inactivity. So I was like, I have to say load securement check, TIV tire check, trip paperwork. Otherwise, it's not a valid. You're not doing your logs right. I had to go in and every single one of those manually correct it, because it just was like, driving, but then I lost you for 1 second, less than 1 second, because it said 0 seconds at one point. And then it did that like 3 or 4 times. So I had to go in there and mark it as corrections. It's like, come on. I rebooted the tablet before I left, tried to connect it again. Finally, by the time I connected it back up, it at least, at the very least, allowed me to put my truck number in there. That way you can try to connect up again. If it loses signal as I'm driving down the road, it will continue to try to connect again until it does. And, but that's as long as the truck is in there at some point. But if it's not in there, then it kicks it back out and says, I'm not going to use that truck number because I can't connect to it. So anyway, the only other bit of excitement I had was I was pulling out of the Pods location, headed to Long Island, and I was on one of those, entrance ramps that doesn't have a speed limit. and I was going 20 to 25 miles an hour, which should have been slow enough. The truck did not feel like it was leaning or doing anything. It just all of a sudden beeps, does its thing, and says roll stability. I'm like, what? Critical event roll stability? Because it wasn't, it wasn't like I was taking it. It wasn't an overly sharp turn. I wasn't taking it fast. I was cruising along. It slowed down and then just cruising along, around the turn. No roll stability. Critical event. Illogical. Luckily, critical events, even though I'm sure Schneider doesn't like seeing them, I really am starting to wonder I have wondered this for a while and talked to multiple people about it, but if I'm going down a hill and there's nobody in front of me, sometimes the truck will just put on the brakes and it will slow down 5 to 8 miles an hour. I'm like, why did you just put on the brakes? There's no one around me. I'm driving in the middle of the night. It's because I was driving downhill, and I think it sees, it's scanning ahead straight in front, and I think it's seeing the road ahead of me, and it's like, oh, you don't want to hit that. I don't know. We'll see it. We'll figure it out. But anyway, so there's a little bit of information and rants and whatever else. I'm doing my next drop tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. because they have a note that says we prioritize our own drivers first, and I know that if I get there at 6, I'm going to be sitting around, so I might as well get there at 8. Small town in South Carolina, so it shouldn't be an issue. I shouldn't have rush hour. And then, there's a little gnat in here. I gotta kill you. I'm gonna get some peppermint oil, put some water, get a spray bottle and put some peppermint oil, fill it up with water and then put a little bit of peppermint oil in there, and then I'm gonna spray it all around the truck, because I have seen some of these stink bug looking things. And I was during my shutdown when I was at home time, very first morning as I'm driving around, they're starting to crawl all over the window. I'm like driving down the road and I see this thing crawl up the window. I'm like, what are you doing, buddy? And then I see another bug, and I saw one walking around up there on the top bunk, and I'm like, okay, I need to, I have multiple paper towels or napkins, actually, because I pick them up from the Flying Jason pilots, and so I pull over and quickly, and I'm like, you better stay there, and then I smash it, okay, if you smash against your window, you're an idiot. Because then you have to clean it up. So what it is, you put it in your hand and then you go around it and then you grab it, then you smash it. So truth be known, but yeah, there you go. I very much appreciate having a CB radio. 2023 is the time I'm recording this, in October no less. And so the West is starting to freeze. I saw a picture earlier today from Wyoming, and it is completely like white. And I'm like, yikes. I just got through telling my DTLs, hey, send me out west before it freezes. It's already freezing. So don't send me out there, because I don't want to have to chain up if I can avoid it, because anytime you have to chain up, it's going to take time. And I don't want to end up chaining up just to end up having to unchain a few miles down the road. And I've seen some videos on YouTube where people say, that's what you got to do sometimes. You got to chain up at the top or bottom because they don't want you driving down the road with the chains on. Unless it's all icy. They'll tell you what they want you to do. State laws. And every single state is different also. Some of them will say, do one of your drive tires and one of your trailer tires. Some of them will say, do all 4 of your drive tires. Or at least 4. If you have double chains, and do all 8 drive tires. But Schneider issues singles. All right, I guess that's it. Hoping for a pre-assignment tomorrow, so that way I can get off and on my merry way. One other note, make sure that you write down the miles that you are doing. So when you get a trip sheet and an assignment, there you can go back in and look at your work history by going into Compass and then looking up assignment history or work history. But what you cannot do is see the miles anymore, the ones that they're paying you for. So when you get your trip sheet and you look at the bottom, it will tell you some crazy amount that's like 3 times higher than it actually is. I don't know how they calculate that. But when you see it in your work assignment, it will tell you the total number of miles. It will tell you how many miles you have to drive from one stop to the next. So going from Atlanta to the New York location was like 977. So it will tell you going from one location to the next. Or if it routes me through like Tennessee and then up there, it will tell me how many miles to Tennessee, then how many miles up to the next place. You have to total those out, but they will also give you a grand total. Keep track of those miles, write them down, because my paycheck today does not have 1,048 miles I turned in last week from me driving when I was in Atlanta, and I was like, "You want me to start my home time early?" And they said, "No, you're on the list." So they sent me from there. They sent me to Tennessee and then to Cinnamon Cin, New Jersey, and they didn't pay me for that. So I called payroll, and they don't have the same hours as us drivers. So I had to leave them a voicemail, including my driver number and my phone number, so that way hopefully they can call me back. And I told them, I said, why wasn't I paid for all the miles that I drove? So they'll hopefully call me and leave me a voicemail message and tell me something. Because I called the OSR group and they said, yeah, you need to call the your DTL. And I said, whenever I call, it's after hours now. And she has hours that extend on past when the switchover is to after hours. So he says, well, I see that she's available. Want me to try to transfer you? I'm like, please. So he transferred me over there and I talked to her for a bit. I like her. She's not afraid to say, oh, I learned something new today, or I'm still learning. It's good. And she's on the ball. She's really smart. All right. Well, I guess that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching.